The peaceful world of Xanthia, an advanced and technologically superior alien civilization, was shaken to its core when a mysterious human spaceship unexpectedly arrived in their orbit. The alien scientists were eager to learn about the humans, and an enigmatic species they had only heard about in legends and scientific records. Despite the incredible advancements on Xanthia, the thought of meeting humans face to face had been an uncharted territory. The Xanthians believed Earth's technology was outdated and its people primitive, but they were intrigued by what they could discover about humanity. However, their curiosity quickly turned into confusion when they tried to establish contact with the human crew. The humans, unlike any species they had encountered, refused to undergo any medical examinations or allow the Xanthians to observe their physiology. Instead, they insisted on being treated only by their own kind. This behavior bewildered the Xanthians, who were used to subjects complying without question. At first, the Xanthian leaders were skeptical, wondering why the humans would reject their offer of advanced care, but they respected the humans' wishes and reluctantly agreed to let them perform their own medical procedures on their own crew. But there was a condition. The Xanthians insisted that one of their top scientists, Dr. Zorak, would oversee the humans' medical operations. Zorak, a highly respected figure in Xanthian research, believed that studying the human body would unlock countless secrets about their biology and physiology. He was convinced that humans, despite their primitive appearance, must possess a unique genetic makeup that could reveal mysteries of the universe. Zorak was fascinated by the human form, its ability to heal itself, its adaptability, and its resilience, and he was determined to uncover these hidden aspects by observing firsthand. The Xanthian Council had no choice but to agree to this arrangement. The humans, though reluctant, were forced to comply, knowing that their safety would depend on following the rules of their hosts. But Dr. Zorak, eager to delve deeper into human biology, underestimated one crucial thing. Humans did not trust easily. Despite the strange and advanced technology around them, the human crew maintained a deep sense of caution and self-preservation. They were not about to let anyone dissect them without understanding the full consequences. As Dr. Zorak prepared for the first round of human medical examinations, he couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. This was a golden opportunity for Xanthian science, a chance to observe a species completely alien to them. The excitement in the air was palpable as his team set up the sterile, advanced medical equipment. But as the first human volunteer stepped forward, a sense of unease settled in. The Xanthians were used to analyzing species without any resistance, but now, as the human doctors prepared for the procedure, they began to notice something unsettling. The humans were not nervous. They were calm, almost too calm, as though they had been through this before. The Xanthians, fascinated by the humans' strange resolve, prepared themselves for what they believed would be a straightforward medical operation. But as soon as the first incision was made, things quickly turned in a direction none of them could have expected. The human body, far more resilient than any Xanthian had predicted, resisted the blade with an unnatural toughness. The tissues were thick, tougher than anything they had ever encountered. Zorak, initially thrilled by this discovery, soon realized that the human anatomy was not only stronger than anticipated, it was something beyond their understanding. As he examined deeper into the body's systems, the shock grew. Every cell, every organ seemed to have an incredible resilience to damage. The Xanthians, who had long relied on their own biological superiority, were stunned. They couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. What kind of species had such remarkable durability? Why hadn't they encountered anything like this before? Dr. Zorak's fascination turned to concern. His excitement was quickly overshadowed by a creeping fear that perhaps they had underestimated humanity in ways they couldn't yet understand. What if the humans were not simply a primitive species after all? What if they were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined? As the examination continued, Zorak couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger and far more terrifying than they had ever expected. Dr. Zorak stood in the sterile operating room, flanked by his team of Xanthian surgeons. Their eyes glowed with curiosity and anticipation. This would be their first true opportunity to study the human form up close, and they were determined to uncover the secrets hidden beneath its seemingly simple exterior. The humans, who had insisted on performing their own medical procedures, had reluctantly agreed to allow the Xanthians to conduct a dissection under careful supervision. Zorak, ever confident in his knowledge of biology, was certain that this would be a groundbreaking moment in their research. For him, the human body was an enigma waiting to be unraveled. The other alien doctors were uneasy, their cool, logical demeanor tested by the strange, primitive species they were about to examine. Humans were unlike anything they had ever encountered before. Their resistance to the procedure was unlike anything the Xanthians had ever faced. But Zorak was not one to back down. He believed that human physiology held the answers to many questions about life itself, and he was prepared to uncover them. The human body, which had been carefully laid out on the operating table, seemed fragile at first glance. Its pale skin, stretched over bones and muscle, with blood vessels tracing beneath the surface like delicate threads. But there was an undeniable presence in the body, an air of quiet strength that Zorak couldn't shake. The alien surgeons moved cautiously, as if the body itself might spring to life and fight back at any moment. With the first incision, Zorak's heart raced. It was more difficult than he anticipated. The skin, rather than cutting easily like that of most species, resisted the blade, as if it were tougher than anything he had ever seen. It was almost as if the human body itself were fighting to stay intact, refusing to yield easily to the cold instruments of the aliens. The Xanthians were taken aback. They had assumed that humans were fragile beings, but the body seemed to possess an unnatural resilience. Zorak was fascinated by this unexpected reaction. He had expected the tissues to be more malleable, more compliant, but instead, it felt as though he were cutting through material far stronger than he had ever imagined. The surgeons paused, exchanging nervous glances. They had never encountered resistance like this in any other species they had studied. The alien doctors were accustomed to dealing with complex biological structures, but nothing had prepared them for the sheer toughness of the human body. It wasn't just the skin. The deeper they went, the more they realized the body was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The tissues were dense and unyielding, the muscles more compact and durable than they had expected. Even the organs seemed to be encased in a protective layer, a kind of natural armor that made them more resilient to damage than any species they had studied before. Zorak's hands shook with a mix of excitement and discomfort. He had been certain that he would uncover the mysteries of human anatomy, but now he was beginning to question just how far these mysteries went. The human body was not just complex, it was almost too complex. It was as if every system, every cell, had been engineered for survival, designed to endure and adapt to the harshest of conditions. The more Zorak and his team cut, the more they realized they had only scratched the surface of something far more profound than they had imagined. The human body was like a puzzle, a perfect balance of resilience and vulnerability, with layers of secrets hiding in every fiber. As they worked, an eerie silence filled the room. The alien surgeons had never felt this unsettled before. The humans, once thought to be a simple, primitive species, were now the subject of something far greater. Zorak's heart raced with both fear and fascination. He pressed on, unable to turn back. Every layer of tissue he uncovered seemed to reveal more questions than answers. What was it about humans that made their bodies so extraordinary? Why was their resilience so far beyond what even the Xanthians had achieved? With every cut, Zorak grew more certain that the human body was not just a biological marvel, it was something entirely different, something that no alien species could hope to replicate. But the deeper they went, the more they began to feel the weight of their own ignorance. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were trapped in a puzzle they could not solve. The room filled with an unspoken tension as the Xanthian surgeons reluctantly continued their work, each one more disturbed than the last. The human body was not just a vessel, it was a fortress, and it was resisting everything they tried to uncover. Zorak could not help but wonder, had they made a mistake in underestimating humanity? Were they about to discover something that would change everything they thought they knew about life itself? As the operation continued, Dr. Zorak's fascination with the human body grew deeper with every layer he uncovered. The more he examined, the more he realized that humanity's biology was unlike anything he had ever studied. Each system within, the human body appeared perfectly designed for survival, almost as if it had been created to adapt and endure, no matter the circumstances. Zorak found organs that were unlike anything found in any other species he had encountered. The liver, for example, showed signs of regeneration that far surpassed anything in Xanthian biology. Where most alien species would have succumbed to injury or disease, the human body appeared to heal itself in ways that seemed almost miraculous. The cells appeared to remember how to repair and restore themselves, almost as if the body had developed an internal blueprint for survival over generations. Zorak couldn't tear his eyes away from the scars lining the human body. The skin was marked by old wounds that had healed in ways no Xanthian medical technique could replicate. The tissue had knitted together so perfectly that there were no signs of weakness, no lingering damage. It was as though the body had somehow learned from its past injuries, adapting itself to prevent the same harm from happening again. Each scar seemed to be a mark of survival, a testament to the human body's ability to withstand trauma and bounce back stronger. Zorak, in all his years of studying alien life, had never seen anything like this. It was as if the human body was built for war, not against other species, but against the world itself. And it was winning. As Zorak and his team continued their work, a sense of unease began to spread through the room. The more they uncovered, the more they realized how little they understood about the true potential of the human form. But the most unsettling discovery came when one of the Xanthian doctors, curious to understand more, made an unintentional contact with the human brain. It was a seemingly small, careless mistake, but the consequences were immediate and shocking. The moment the alien doctor's finger brushed against the neural tissue, a sudden jolt seemed to pulse through the human body. Zorak froze as he watched the human's heart rate spike and adrenaline flood the bloodstream. For a brief moment, the body seemed to come alive, as if it had been dormant and now had awoken with a newfound strength. The muscles tensed, and the human's reflexes became unnaturally fast. The body was suddenly capable of more than Zorak or any of the Xanthian surgeons could have predicted. In an instant, the human's fingers twitched with alarming speed, and the muscles in its arms and legs tightened as if preparing for an attack. The surge of energy was so intense that one of the Xanthian surgeons, who was standing too close, stumbled back in shock. "What is happening?" one of the Xanthians whispered, his voice laced with both fear and wonder. Zorak's mind raced. He had never seen anything like this before. The human body seemed to respond to stress or threat with a precision and power that no alien species could replicate. It wasn't just a physical response. It was as if the body itself was programmed to survive at any cost. Zorak studied the human form more closely now, piecing together what he had seen. The brain, it seemed, was the key to unlocking the body's extraordinary capabilities. It was as though the human body had a built-in defense mechanism, a way to instantly tap into a reservoir of strength when faced with danger. For a moment, the room was silent, the alien surgeons unable to comprehend what had just occurred. They had all assumed that the human body was simply a vessel, fragile and easy to understand. But this was something beyond their wildest expectations. The human body was not merely a passive, vulnerable thing. It was a dynamic, living, entity that could adapt and react to threats in ways that no Xanthian species, no matter how advanced, could ever hope to match. Zorak, still trying to process what had just happened, turned to his team. They were all stunned, their eyes wide with disbelief. No one knew what to make of this new revelation. The human body, it seemed, was far more than just a biological marvel. It was a weapon in its own right. A weapon of survival, designed by nature to overcome any obstacle, to adapt to any threat. The implications were profound. The Xanthians, despite all their superior technology, had never encountered anything like this before. For the first time, Dr. Zorak felt a cold shiver of doubt creep into his mind. He had come to study humanity, but now he found himself questioning whether he had underestimated them. This discovery, this strange, almost terrifying strength, was far beyond anything he could have imagined. The human body, he realized, was not just resilient. It was a force to be reckoned with, and this was only the beginning. As the dissection continued, the atmosphere aboard the human ship grew increasingly tense. The human crew, once cooperative and trusting, began to grow increasingly anxious as more of their comrades were subjected to the Xanthian dissection process. The Xanthians had assured them that this was for scientific study, that it was the price of learning. But with each passing day, the humans felt more and more like lab rats, their bodies used as instruments for some unknown, perhaps sinister purpose. They could no longer ignore the feeling that something wasn't right. The humans began to demand answers. What exactly were the Xanthians doing to their crew members? What had they learned so far? But the Xanthians, with their cold, calculating demeanor, only provided vague assurances and explanations that seemed to lack transparency. Tension between the two species quickly reached a boiling point. The humans, accustomed to being in control of their own lives, began to feel a deep sense of betrayal. They were not helpless victims, they were survivors, and they refused to allow themselves to be manipulated for the benefit of another species. They began organizing in secret, whispering in corners, quietly preparing for the worst. They knew they couldn't just wait for the next dissection to come. They had to act. A few days later, a human doctor who had been assisting the Xanthian team, one who had initially trusted the aliens, made a bold move. In a hushed conversation, she pulled aside several of the human crew members and revealed a chilling discovery. She had been observing the Xanthians closely, and what she had learned sent shivers down her spine. The aliens weren't just studying human biology. They were using the information to develop new methods of biological warfare. The regenerative capabilities of the human body, the extraordinary strength, and the adaptability, all of it was being analyzed and used to create weapons far more terrifying than the humans had ever imagined. The human crew now understood the true extent of the threat they faced. They were not simply the subjects of a scientific study, they were becoming the test subjects for something much darker. The humans were furious. Their trust had been violated. They had agreed to come here in peace, hoping for a simple exchange of knowledge. But now they saw their very bodies being weaponized. They could not allow this to continue. A plan was quickly set into motion. They would escape, no matter what it took. It wasn't just about saving themselves. It was about stopping the Xanthians from turning them into tools of war. Working together, the human crew managed to infiltrate the alien facility. Quietly and methodically, they bypassed security systems, moving like shadows through the corridors of the Xanthian base. The adrenaline was high, but their determination was even higher. They couldn't afford to fail. If they did, they would never leave this place alive. They moved quickly but carefully, disabling the systems that held them trapped in this foreign place. They knew the Xanthians would soon realize what was happening, and they had no intention of being caught before they made their escape. As the humans reached the central control room, the door slid open with a soft hiss, but as they stepped inside, they were met with an unexpected sight. A group of Xanthian soldiers stood waiting, their eyes glowing with the cold precision that was characteristic of their kind. The confrontation was inevitable. The humans had known this moment would come, the moment when they would have to fight for their freedom. But even knowing it was coming, the sight of the Xanthian soldiers still sent a surge of fear through their veins. The aliens, with their advanced technology and superior intelligence, seemed like an insurmountable force. Yet the humans were driven by something stronger than fear: the need to survive. A tense silence filled the room as both sides prepared for what was about to unfold. The humans stood tall, despite the overwhelming odds. They had learned much from the Xanthians, but now they were ready to put that knowledge to use. The Xanthians, cold and calculating, were ready to crush any rebellion, but they had underestimated the human spirit. As the first shots were fired, the humans fought back with a fierce determination that even the Xanthians could not have predicted. This was no longer just a battle for escape. It was a battle for their very existence. And the humans were prepared to fight until the end. The escape plan was working. The humans had managed to free several of their own from the grip of the Xanthians, including one of their brightest minds, Dr. Asha Duran. She had been at the forefront of their medical efforts and had seen firsthand the terrifying ways in which the Xanthians were studying their bodies. Now, with her expertise and the humans' growing desperation, they were more determined than ever to escape. But it wasn't just their weapons they relied on. It was the incredible biological advantages that their species possessed. The Xanthians had underestimated the human body, believing it to be fragile, but Dr. Duran knew better. She understood that humans could survive in environments no other species could endure. She had seen their bodies adapt to extreme conditions, seen them heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. It wasn't just about physical strength. It was about a resilience that seemed hardwired into them, an ability to evolve and adapt in ways the Xanthians couldn't replicate. Dr. Duran led her small team through the dark corridors of the alien ship, each step filled with both fear and hope. The Xanthians had superior technology, but the humans had something more powerful: the will to survive. As they encountered Xanthian soldiers, the humans fought back with a fierce tenacity that shocked their captors. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting to prove that they would not be reduced to mere experiments. As they clashed with the Xanthians, Dr. Duran couldn't help but marvel at how far humanity had come. Their bodies, which the aliens had once viewed as fragile and primitive, were now their greatest weapon. The humans adapted on the fly, using the ship's layout to their advantage, exploiting weaknesses in the Xanthian forces. With each victory, the humans grew more confident, their determination unshaken by the overwhelming odds. The Xanthians, cold and calculating, had never encountered a species that could fight with such unyielding tenacity. It was clear to them, now that the humans were not just a biological puzzle to be studied. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Xanthians were used to analyzing and mastering other species, bending them to their will. But this was different. The humans had no intention of being controlled. They were a force of nature, adapting, learning, and fighting back in ways that the Xanthians could neither predict nor understand. But as Dr. Duran and her team made their way through the labyrinthine corridors, they stumbled upon something far more disturbing than they had imagined. Behind a hidden door, deep within the bowels of the ship, they discovered a secret chamber. The room was filled with rows of containers, each one holding what appeared to be alien specimens. Some were humanoid in shape, their features twisted and deformed. Others were unrecognizable. Experiments, failed attempts to replicate the human body's remarkable adaptability. As Dr. Duran moved closer, she felt a chill run down her spine. The specimens in these containers were not alien. At all, they were human, or had once been human. The Xanthians had been experimenting on their own kind, modifying them in a desperate attempt to unlock the secrets of humanity's resilience. Some of the humans in the containers had been so altered that they were barely recognizable, their bodies mutilated and altered in grotesque ways. It was clear that the Xanthians had been trying to create a version of humanity that could be controlled, one that could be used as a weapon, just as the humans had feared. Dr. Duran's heart raced. As she gazed at the specimens, her mind reeling. The Xanthians had been playing a dangerous game. They had taken innocent lives in the pursuit of power, in an attempt to replicate the very thing that made humanity unique. She couldn't let this stand. These altered humans had to be freed, no matter the cost. But time was running out. The Xanthians were closing in, and the escape plan was on the verge of collapse. Dr. Duran and her team knew that they had to act quickly. They could not allow these experiments to continue, and they could not let the Xanthians continue to use humanity as their personal laboratory. With renewed determination, Dr. Duran gathered her team and began to formulate a new plan. The Xanthians may have thought they could control humanity, but they had made a grave mistake. Humanity was not something to be controlled. It was a force that could not be tamed, and it would fight back against any force that threatened its survival. Dr. Duran's eyes burned with the fire of vengeance as she led her team out of the chamber. They had a new mission now, one that would not only ensure their survival, but also stop the Xanthians from using humanity as pawns in their twisted experiments. The humans moved quickly through the dark corridors of the Xanthian facility, their hearts racing, knowing that time was running out. Their escape was now a race against the clock. The Xanthians were closing in, and they couldn't afford to stop for long. But in one of the deepest chambers of the ship, they made a chilling discovery. It wasn't just another empty room or a storage closet. It was a command center, filled with consoles and glowing screens that displayed data they couldn't fully understand. Yet there, in the center of the room, was something that made Dr. Duran's blood run cold. The Xanthian records. As she and her team scrolled through the data, they uncovered a history of the Xanthians' failed attempts to clone humans, to replicate the unique biological traits that made them so resilient. The records were filled with countless experiments, genetic modifications, and biological alterations, all aimed at unlocking the secret behind humanity's unmatched adaptability. The Xanthians, despite their advanced technology and superior intellect, had been unable to replicate the human body's ability to endure, regenerate, and survive against all odds. It was clear now that the Xanthians had been trying to steal humanity's most precious gift, the ability to survive no matter the cost. The realization was a shock. The Xanthians had studied humanity for years, believing they could recreate the same resilience in their own species. They had failed at every turn, unable to capture the essence of what made humans so extraordinary. In the end, it wasn't just about physical strength or biological structure. The human body was a living testament to survival, not because it was perfect, but because it could adapt, learn, and grow stronger through hardship. This was something the Xanthians could never replicate. The humans were not just strong in body, they were strong in spirit. As the team processed the gravity of their discovery, a deeper question began to form in Dr. Duran's mind. The Xanthians had tried to steal humanity's power through science, through technology, through experimentation. But what if the true strength of humanity wasn't something that could be cloned or engineered? What if it was something that could only be understood by the humans themselves? This thought gnawed at Dr. Duran as they continued their escape. Meanwhile, Dr. Zorak, back in the main part of the ship, was also grappling with a profound realization. He had spent years studying the Xanthian way, their advanced technology, their biological prowess, and their ability to manipulate genetics and biology to achieve their goals. The Xanthians were the pinnacle of scientific achievement, or so he had always believed. But as he observed the humans, how they fought back with such tenacity, how they survived against all odds, he began to question his own views. Zorak had always seen technology as the solution to all problems, the way forward for his species. But now, watching the humans in action, he saw something his people had never fully appreciated: a raw, unyielding strength that couldn't be quantified or created with science alone. It was a strength of the mind and spirit, something that came from within, not from technology or bioengineering. Humans, despite their relatively primitive biology, had a drive to survive that no Xanthian could replicate. It was something more than survival. It was a determination to thrive, to innovate, and to adapt in the face of challenges. Zorak began to question whether the Xanthians, in their pursuit of perfection and control, had missed something crucial. Their reliance on technology and bioengineering had made them powerful, yes, but it had also made them fragile in ways they couldn't understand. They had become dependent on their inventions, on their advancements, and had lost the one thing that made humans so extraordinary: their ability to evolve and persevere without relying on external tools or enhancements. As Zorak watched the humans, his mind began to change. Could it be that their true strength lay not in what they could build, but in what they could overcome? He couldn't deny it any longer. There was something uniquely human about the way they faced adversity. It was a fire that burned in their hearts, a spark that no amount of technology could ever extinguish. This realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. For the first time, Zorak understood that the humans were not the weak, primitive species he had once believed them to be. They were far more powerful than the Xanthians had ever imagined. And now, in the wake of their escape, he found himself caught between awe and fear. What if the humans had more to teach the Xanthians than they had ever realized? As the humans made their final push through the dark, winding corridors of the Xanthian facility, they knew that escape was almost within their grasp. But they also knew the fight was far from over. Every step brought them closer to freedom, but also deeper into the unknown. The ship's alarms blared, signaling that the Xanthians were fully aware of their escape and closing in on them. Dr. Duran, leading her team with a sense of urgency, had only one goal in mind: to get her crew back to the human ship and escape before the Xanthians could stop them. But just as they prepared to make their final move, a voice from the shadows stopped them. It was Dr. Zorak. He stepped into the dim light, his expression unreadable. The humans tensed, ready to fight, but Zorak raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to stop you," he said quietly. "I'm here to help." The humans exchanged uncertain glances, still unsure of whether they could trust him. But Zorak's eyes were filled with something they hadn't seen before: genuine concern. He lowered his voice. "The Xanthian government has set a trap. You've been trying to escape, but they're preparing to launch a full-scale attack on Earth. They plan to harvest your species, to steal your biology, and use it to fuel their weapons. Your survival, your ability to endure, is what they want, and they will not stop until they have it." The words struck like a hammer. The humans had known the Xanthians were ruthless. But this? A full-scale invasion? Dr. Duran's heart raced as she processed the implications. The Xanthians weren't just trying to study humanity, they were trying to dominate it, to turn the human race into nothing more than an endless supply of biological resources. They had underestimated the humans' strength, their resilience, and now they intended to take it by force. Dr. Zorak continued, his voice tinged with urgency. "I know you can't trust me fully, but I can help you. I can help you sabotage the ship's core systems and stop the invasion before it begins." There was a long silence. The humans exchanged wary looks, but Zorak's words were hard to ignore. He had been a part of the system, but now, standing before them, he seemed to be something more, a reluctant ally. In the end, Dr. Duran made the call. They had no choice. If they didn't act now, humanity's future would be at the mercy of a race that had never understood what it meant to truly struggle, to fight, to survive. With Zorak's help, the humans navigated through the final security systems. Each step, bringing them closer to the heart of the Xanthian ship. Zorak guided them to the control room where the ship's most sensitive systems were housed. It was a race against time. If they didn't disable the ship's systems now, the Xanthians would launch their attack, and humanity would be doomed. As Zorak worked to infiltrate the alien technology, Dr. Duran and her team fought to hold off any Xanthian soldiers that came too close. The tension was unbearable, every second feeling like an eternity. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Zorak gave a single nod. The ship's systems were compromised. The countdown to the invasion had been stopped. As the humans made their way back to the hangar, ready to board their ship and leave Xanthia behind, a strange sense of finality hung in the air. They had won. They had survived. But Dr. Duran noticed Zorak standing back in the shadows, watching them as they prepared to leave. For a moment, their eyes met, and she saw something in his gaze, a mix of respect and sorrow. Zorak had seen enough. He had witnessed firsthand the strength and determination of humanity. He had watched as they fought not just for survival, but for a future. The Xanthians had underestimated humanity, and in doing so, they had learned a painful lesson. Dr. Zorak knew in that moment that there was something about humans that could never be replicated or controlled. It wasn't just their biology, it was their spirit. They had shown him that true strength didn't come from technology or power. It came from within, from the ability to face adversity head-on and overcome it, no matter the odds. As the human ship lifted off from the surface of Xanthia, leaving the alien world behind, the humans breathed a collective sigh of relief. They had not only survived, they had proven something far more important. That their greatest gift was not their biology, but their ability to endure and grow in the face of any challenge. The Xanthians had failed to see that, and now they would be left to grapple with the consequences of their arrogance. Humanity's strength had been tested, and in the end, it had triumphed. And as Dr. Zorak watched the human ship disappear into the stars, he couldn't help but wonder. Was it the humans who had been the true masters of the universe all along?